I was just thinking over the last few minutes, just driving, and thinking. And over the last few months, a few people have asked me if I'd consider running for election. And you contemplate these things and you try and picture and imagine what that would look like and what that would feel like and how you would be and all that sort of stuff, what sorts of points you'd bring up in conversations or debates or whatever the case is. And for myself, I'm not a good person for remembering statistics or numbers or engaging in overly intellectual conversations or debates, right? Because I find a lot of it very dull and boring, to be honest with you, because I think I'm a very simple person. I think my worldview is very, very simple because I believe it to be grounded in biology and not in abstract thought, because I don't think there's any real need for it, right? And what I mean when I say my worldview is grounded in biology is that, as far as I'm concerned, right, we all understand pain. We all understand hurt. Some people might get off on that a little bit, right? And those people exist, and off you go, just keep it out of my back garden, right? But to simplify it, I understand what it's like to be hurt. I understand that if I walk through nettles barefoot, I will be stung. Therefore, I would consider that a wrong thing to do to someone, would be to shove them into a load of nettles barefoot. Because I know what that feeling would be like. And therefore, basing, I suppose, past experience or knowledge of a situation and then pushing someone into that situation against their will would be wrong in my view, right? Because you're causing pain in somebody else. And I suppose the foundation of that then would be, is the argument that it is wrong to cause other people pain, or is it that you've taken their choice away? Because you can cause people pain without wanting to, but knowing that you might need to. Like, the truth is a terrible, terrible thing to those that don't want to hear it, right? And most of us don't want to hear it because it stings, right? It's the nettles. Because otherwise everyone would be honest all day long and there'd be no such thing as lying, because the truth would bathe us and balm us and make us feel lovely all the time. But it's not the case, because it sucks sometimes. Because our view of ourselves can be challenged. Okay, and our weaknesses might be brought to the surface and exposed to a degree. And we don't like that. No one likes that, right? So the next question then, as I said a minute ago, is it the taking away of somebody's choice, of somebody's free will, that would be the problem for me? Yeah, I go along with that. Because you see a lot of, I suppose it's coming from like neuroscientists like Daniel Dennett and Sam Harris, and to a degree now as well Bernardo Kastrup, right, who's an idealist in theory, or in words anyway. But they're all questioning the idea of, is free will illusory? And a couple of them are kind of reaching the conclusion that, well, yes, it is. You don't have free will. And free will means the ability to make your own decisions based off of what you want, right? So what you're choosing out of all potentials, you're zoning in on this one choice, and or on this one action, and you're taking that above all else because you want to. Okay? Not because you're compelled to in some way. We can do that too. But that's not a full exercising of free will, right? And it's great to be able to distinguish between the two and knowing when you're doing something because you're kind of compelled to do it, versus when you're doing something because your whole being and your heart is aimed at that thing, right? And sometimes it can feel like you don't have free will because you feel pushed or pulled towards this thing. I'll go with pushed, because it's coming from inside yourself. You're pushed and moved towards this thing, even though it might cause you some frailties or some friction in your relationships, or in mainly your relationships, right? So we can kind of shy away from doing things that we naturally gravitate towards because of the effects that it might have on our personal relationships, right? Largely. So what can happen then as a result is when we prioritize interpersonal relationships, we can deny or we can neglect that we have free will. So what am I saying this for? I'm saying this because we can sit around and debate about things. We can talk about free will, and I can give examples as to why I believe I have free will, and then Sam Harris can give examples as to why we definitely don't. Who cares? Like, at the end of the day, we can bring it back to hurt and pain, okay? Because there's no escaping that. The body experiences pain before we even begin to start thinking abstractly about it. It feels pain. We empathize with people. What is that? It's like a shared pain to a degree. We can feel that with someone. Do you ever get, like, when someone walks into a room and you can feel their mood? You know, or it feels like you know what they're feeling. Because your nervous system, your physiological system, it mirrors what's going on with the other person. And yes, you can get that wrong sometimes when you overthink it or you insert thinking into it instead of basing it on a legitimate physiological reaction. But we can understand that. Dogs are the same. If you spend enough time around dogs understand and they know how you're feeling, probably sometimes before you know how you're feeling. You know? And dog people, you'll know this. The dog will, they'll feel before you even say anything to them or make eye contact. They know what kind of mood you're in when you walk in the front door. And children are the same. If you've been around kids know this stuff too, right? But over time, then we kind of detach a little bit from that and we lose that way. So what's this all about? And what does this have to do with politics and running for election? I want to keep it simple because that's what works for me, right? And I keep it as simple as this. Evil exists in the world. And evil is EVIL. To live is LIVE. Like, they're the same word, they're just spelled backwards, right? So evil to me is infringing on another person's right. And mind the rights. Another person's ability to exercise free will and live according to their own nature. Now, people make a aims of discovering what their nature is or working in alignment with that. And that's fine, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? We all have our own natures, our own individual and nuanced and unique natures and temperaments and predispositions and interests and all that kind of stuff, right? So when someone is trying to affect that, Oscar Wilde said it, that all influence is horrible or all influence is evil, right? That kind of thing. When you're trying to make someone adhere to your vision and neglect their own to go along with yours, right? That's evil to me. And that's how simple. That's as simple as I keep it. That's as simple as I need it, and I believe that that's as simple as we all need it. Anything else is kind of distraction, or a distraction away from the basic, fundamental biological response to life. When we do things that are in line with our nature and our values and our hopes and ambitions and dreams and in our experience of life, we feel good. We feel good about ourselves. We feel lighter. We feel younger. We feel more full of life, right? Because we're living. We are living when we're working according to our own nature. And then the opposite of that then is evil, when we go against that. Or when someone else tries to manipulate us to go against that in some way. Or when they use force to impose their living or their nature or their wants or desires onto us. That's evil, okay? So I keep it very simple. I'm a human being. You're a human being. Most of the people in the country are human beings. But we've kind of failed to understand that or accept that. And what we do instead is we elevate offices and roles. And I think this is where the postmodernists are absolutely onto something, because they're not talking absolute nonsense. the conclusions as to what they do with the worldview they've come up with, or the critique of a worldview that they've come up with, can be totally horrible. But there's method in the madness to a degree, and they talk about like power and influence a lot, and the power that we attribute to certain things, like to language or to morality or to customs or traditions. And they would make the argument that it is erroneous to attribute such power and objective standing to something that is subjectively seen in what it is that we're talking about, right? So the idea of religion. So people might act like their religion is objectively true, and they would expect other people to take on that same worldview. And the postmodernists would say, well, you can't verify that it is objectively true. Therefore, it is like, what is it? The overarching narrative of, I think, is Lyotard is the name of one of the guys. So he was saying we need to suspend the idea of overarching narratives. But the idea, I think it's Foucault as well who spoke about the power dynamics, right? And I think they're certainly onto something. Because if we look at it, we have certain people in certain positions, and it doesn't seem to matter what sort of person what type of moral agent or what type of person an individual is. What tends to matter to us more is the position that they're in. Even though it's not, you can't measure it, or there's nothing magical about a position that gives people a moral superiority over other people. It doesn't work like that. It's the choices that each individual makes that should, if it's going to at all, that should elicit the respect or the attribution of a sort of influence or social power in that person. Not because of the office that they have or the job that they have, but because of the kind of heart and soul that they have, and the actions and the choices that they make, and how they overcome adversity, and how they treat people who are more vulnerable to them. Do you know, how you behave when nobody's looking, sort of a thing, right? And I think this is where the postmodernists are onto something. Most of it is illegible dribble to a large degree, but you can see the point that they're trying to make, okay? And I think it should be well worn and well worn to the Irish people, because I think we're caught in that funk where we elevate people based on the office that they have and not the character that they have, if you understand my meaning. And so I like to pull it back, as I was saying, to really, really simple things. And so to me, a judge or a politician or a guard or a teacher or whatever you want to say, like a barrister or whatever, they're just people to me. And they should be to you too. They're just people. You know? I remember there was a family member going for an interview years ago, and it was an important one. It was a management position, and it was his first time going for a management position. And he was saying he was nervous about it. And another family member said to him, look, man, they put their pants on in the morning too, and they wipe their arse the same way you do. It's as simple as that. And that stuck with me. And it's true. People are people. And people have the ability to make decisions, and that's what you should judge them on. The choices that they make and the actions that they take. Not the job that they have, or how much money they have, or what college or university they went to, or how much pedigree they have in their lineage, right? Those things can factor in some ways, but it shouldn't be how you judge the actions that people take. Because in Ireland, we see people in lofty positions making horrendous decisions and horrible, taking terrible paths of actions that are destroying people's lives. And we seem to turn a blind eye to that simply because of the job that they would write down on a CV that they had, right? So to me, to engage in that sort of world would force me, or not even force me, it would demand of me a moving of, I don't even know how to put the words onto it now, but it would extract something from me that I'm not willing to hand over, or I'm not willing to become more dominant in my personality or in the way I view the world or interact with the world and the people in it than I'm willing to do. Okay? And ideally, might sound like a cop-out to some people, but ideally, I would like to see, and I think we need to get to the place where we all begin to see each other as just other people. Just other people. And we all judge each other based on the actions that we take, right? We try and understand the situation and the context, but we also judge people on the actions that they take. And in order to judge someone on the actions that they take, you're speaking about the morality of those actions. But in order to understand it and be conversant with the morality shared between people, you need to have your own understanding of what pain is and what empathy is. Okay, because we can kind of excuse some suffering with some people, and then we would be out on the streets if it was a different person that experienced nearly the exact same thing based upon their social standing. Okay, and I don't like that, and I don't want that. That's a terrible thing if someone is holding you to different standards than other people, because you can only ever let people down with expectations, right? So fundamentally, what my point is this. I would not be willing to martyr myself, because that's what I would have to do if I was to run for election. I'd have to martyr myself for the sake of people who don't view other people as just regular other people. They view them according to their social status and the jobs that they have. And the Bill Hicks line, we have people that come and tell you, like, look, this is all a big ride. It's an experience. You're here to cultivate the storyline that you're supposed to. You're right to write your chapter in this book of life, right? And people come around every now and again and they inform people of this and they try and smarten them up, and we kill those people. That sort of a thing. I'm not saying that I'd be killed if I ran for election, but I'm just saying I might have to kill something in myself if I was going to. And that's something I'm not really willing to do, right? But I can still comment on what I want to see or what I'd like to see, or in order for me to recognize that we're moving in the right direction, what I would have to see. And that is a recognition from most people that those they see in positions of power and socially as above them, that they're just regular people too. And because if we really began to see that and believe that and feel that and know that, then we would be going and we would be performing our own citizen's arrest on these people, because they're ruining lives. Politicians that are in there now, and whatever other strands of the web there is, right? Throw a dart at it and whatever you want. But we would be just going up, taking these people and going, you're not allowed in that position anymore. This position's here to serve us and you've not been doing that. So now we're removing you from that, and you will never get any sort of position like that again if you escape whatever sort of court case we have for you, or any sort of investigation that we have for you, right? So those are my 2 cents on it for what it's worth. Have a good evening. Be humble. And be humble doesn't mean beat yourself down to being beneath the feet of other people. It means recognizing what you're not strong on and recognizing what you're absolutely powerful with and working according to that, which is, again, it goes back to your own nature. Because I do really, really believe that what we're living through now is a direct mirror of what the average mindset is like for the average Irish person, myself included, right? I think we're very disjointed psychologically, and why wouldn't we be? Again, context matters. Why wouldn't we be? We've had generations of Irish history. Need I say any more, right? So we haven't come to grips with any of that stuff yet. So of course we're not in a position to be looking at ourselves as leaders or as kings of our own people, of our own family, let alone of a country or a nation. We're miles away from that. And that doesn't mean that the people in power are any closer to that, right? They just wear a better facade of it than we would even try to do, you know? So ultimately, again, the psychological thing. You can say spiritual if you want, because whatever name you want to put on it. What goes on in here and in here is mirrored in the external world and in the society that we live in. How could it not be? How I view myself determines the actions that I take. The actions that I take that determine the environment around me. Okay? Be that people or be that just nature or whatever the case is. And then you expand that up, right? So when you've loads of people that are unsure of themselves, they're going to vote in people who paint the image that they're absolutely sure of themselves. Because deep down we know that we're not fully sure of ourselves. And we hate to admit that. We refuse to admit that at times, right? So, again, look in. And also, I was saying a minute ago, what would in order for me to come to the belief that we're heading in the right direction, which I believe we are, what would I need to see or what would I expect to see in people? One of them is this. For every single person to reflect on themselves and ask themselves, in whatever small amount or massive amount, what did you contribute? And what have you given? What has been your offering that has led us to where we are now? Because every single one of us have a part to play in the position that we're in. And to try and sidestep that or deny that or to explain away and hide behind the fact that no, I didn't know. I've always been switched on and seen things. No. Because in order to say that, or in order to escape any responsibility for where we are, you would need to be able to say that I acted according to my nature 100% of the time. No one can do that. Okay? And so if we cannot claim perfection, we must admit to human failings on our own parts, and we all have them. So that's the big conversation, and I think that's how we get out of this. One of the massive ways that aid us in getting out of this is examining ourselves and understanding that every single one of us had a part to play in where we are right now. Okay? And it's not just to whip yourself over, it's to understand that. You know? Because if you fall over something, it's important to look back. What do we do when we trip over? We look back. What caught me there? We should do the same thing with our own experience and our own psychology as well. We have landed ourselves in an all-merciful well of oil and tar that we're slowly trying to maneuver ourselves out of, right? So we need to look back and retrace our steps and understand how we got here and what responsibility I have in getting us here or getting myself here, okay? Because you have, what's the line in The Prisoner, Patrick McGowan, everybody votes for a dictator, either knowingly or unknowingly. And we need to apply that to ourselves. Again, not to whip ourselves, which the Irish people love to do, because there's no need for that anymore. But let's just evaluate ourselves honestly, and let's speak the truth with ourselves. Let's wear it, and then take it off when it doesn't feel nice, because it doesn't. And we put it away for a while, and then we put it on again a little while later. And we become a little bit more accustomed to being radically responsible for ourselves and with ourselves. And then you'll start to see, as far as I understand it, and this is my feeling on it, then we will start to see confident people stand up and say, you're no different than me. You are absolutely no different than me. In fact, sometimes I think that I'm morally superior than you are. Not because I'm gloating about it, but just because I'm looking at the actions that you're taking and the choices that you're making. And I couple that up with mine and I go, mine are better than yours because they lead to less injury and hurt for other people. And that's a good way. That's a good thing. Okay? And I feel myself more honest than you, whatever the case is. So when we get to the point where we can look at these people and we can stand right in front of a guard and look at him as just a person with a hat in their head that is no better than you because of the outfit they wear, which is a nonsense, or the role that they have. When we can do that, we can look at a politician and we can speak without trembling, okay? We can speak honestly to them and we can demand We don't even have to do it verbally, but just our stature and our presence will demand respect from these people when we start to believe in ourselves individually again. Okay? And when we start to look at these people and say, no longer are you going to be telling me what to do with my life or making any decisions for me or that impact on me. The next one you make, if we're going to be that lenient, that impacts on me or anyone in a negative way, you're out of here. And I'm going to take you out of here. Then we move. But at the moment, we're not there. We're really, really not there. Where we are, I believe, is we're in the position of a child that has been terribly abused by his parents. And if you've been around kids who've been destroyed by early life, you'll understand that the abuse is always coupled with love, or the expectation of love, right? Because we're all born expecting our parents to love us in some way or whatever. We don't think about it, we feel it, right? That there's a need for love from us, and there's an expectation of love from them. So when we get abused, we end up coupling the two things together and conflating them and confusing them. So our desire for love will colour the abuse as a sign of love. You're doing this now for your own good, kind of thing. We all heard this. We all hear it. We hear it and we've heard it, right? So what that leads to is people that are so badly damaged that they will accept any sort of horrible behaviour from people if it's just a little bit better than the brutality that they've experienced before. And that's what this government plays on. If you look at it with open eyes, right, and just park all of your presuppositions and your a priori beliefs around the thing, right, park it. Just look at the actions and how these politicians speak to you. They speak to you like they're your parents. And we accept that because we view ourselves as children. And my point in all of this big long monologue is, up until the point where we start to assess ourselves realistically and honestly, we're stuck here. And we deserve to be.